The spring rains of 1901 had transformed the usually reliable terrain of the Black Hills region in South Dakota into a treacherous landscape of hidden dangers and unstable ground. But rancher Ez Holbrook had no choice but to venture into the remote canyon where one of his prize colts had become trapped during the night, setting in motion a series of events that would test not only his courage and survival skills, but also reveal secrets buried beneath the earth that would change his understanding of the land he had called home for 15 years. Ez operated the Thunder Creek Ranch on 8,000 acres of rolling hills and valleys about 30 miles northwest of Rapid City, where he had built a reputation as one of the territory's most skilled horse breeders and trainers. His operation specialized in producing horses that combined the stamina and intelligence needed for ranch work with the speed and agility that made them valuable for both practical use and competitive racing throughout the Dakota Territory. At 30, Ez had devoted his entire adult life to understanding the land and the animals that thrived in the challenging environment of the Black Hills, developing expertise in both horse breeding and the geological characteristics of the region that allowed him to utilize terrain that other ranchers considered difficult or dangerous for livestock operations. The colt that had become trapped was Blaze, a two-year-old stallion that represented the culmination of Ez's breeding program, a horse whose bloodlines combined the best characteristics of Arabian endurance with American quarter-horse speed and strength. Blaze's potential value was enormous, but more importantly, to Ez, the young horse had become a personal favorite, whose intelligence and spirit had made him almost like a companion rather than simply livestock. The storm that had passed through the area during the night had created flash flooding in the canyon systems that crisscrossed Ez's ranch, washing out familiar trails and creating new obstacles that made navigation dangerous for both horses and humans. But Ez's discovery that Blaze was missing from the main pasture had prompted an immediate search that led him to Devil's Canyon, a narrow gorge where the colt's frantic whinnying could be heard echoing off the limestone walls. "Ez, boy, Ez," called out as he approached the canyon rim, trying to calm Blaze while also assessing the situation that had trapped the young horse. "I'm going to get you out of there, but you need to stay calm while I figure out how to do it safely." The scene that Ez observed from the canyon rim was both heartbreaking and terrifying. Blaze had apparently fallen into the canyon during the storm and was now trapped on a narrow ledge about 20 feet below the rim, with steep walls on all sides that prevented him from climbing out on his own. The ledge appeared stable, but Ez could see that any attempt by the horse to move could result in a fall to the canyon floor, another 40 feet below. The rescue that Ez immediately began planning required equipment and techniques that went beyond normal ranch work, involving rope climbing and anchoring methods that he had learned during his younger years, working in the mining camps of the Black Hills. But the unstable conditions created by the recent storm made every aspect of the rescue more dangerous than it would have been under normal circumstances. Ez's first priority was securing a rope system that would allow him to descend safely to Blaze's position, while also providing a means of lifting the horse to safety. The anchoring points he selected appeared solid, but the rain-soaked limestone of the canyon walls was more fragile than it appeared, creating risks that Ez was forced to accept in order to save Blaze from a situation that would otherwise be fatal. "Hold on, Blaze," Ez said as he tested his rope anchors and prepared to rappel down to the trapped colt. "This is going to be tricky, but we've both handled difficult situations before." The descent into the canyon was more challenging than Ez had anticipated, with loose rock and slippery surfaces that made maintaining secure footing difficult, even with proper equipment and experience. But his determination to save Blaze drove him to continue despite the obvious dangers that surrounded every aspect of the rescue operation. When Ez reached the ledge where Blaze was trapped, he found that the colt was in better condition than he had feared, but was clearly exhausted and dehydrated from his ordeal. The young horse's relief at seeing his human companion was obvious, but Ez could also see that Blaze was too weak to assist actively in his own rescue. "Ez boy," Ez said, as he examined Blaze for injuries while also assessing the logistics of getting both of them safely out of the canyon. "You're going to be fine, but we need to do this carefully so neither of us gets hurt." The rigging system that Ez designed to lift Blaze required him to use his horse training skills to keep the colt calm while also managing complex rope work in a confined space with limited options for movement or adjustment. The process was slow and methodical, with each step requiring careful attention to both Blaze's comfort and the mechanical requirements of the lifting operation. But as Ez worked to position the lifting harness around Blaze, he began to notice details about the canyon walls and ledge formation that suggested this location was not simply a natural geological feature. The regularity of certain rock formations and the presence of what appeared to be tool marks on some surfaces indicated that human activity had modified this canyon in ways that were not immediately obvious from above. "What the hell?" Ez muttered as he examined what appeared to be carved symbols on the canyon wall near where Blaze was trapped. These aren't natural formations. The symbols that Ez discovered were clearly deliberate markings that had been carved into the limestone, but they didn't match any of the Native American petroglyphs that he was familiar with from other locations in the Black Hills. The style and execution suggested European origins, but the presence of such markings in this remote location raised questions about who had been in this canyon and why they had taken the time to create permanent records of their presence. As Ez continued his examination of the canyon walls, while preparing Blaze for the lift to safety, he began to understand that the ledge where the Colt was trapped was not a natural formation, but rather part of a larger structure that had been carved into the canyon wall. What he had initially assumed was a geological accident was actually evidence of deliberate construction that had been concealed by weathering and vegetation over many years. The discovery that the canyon contained evidence of human construction forced Ez to reconsider his understanding of the land that he had been working for 15 years, while also raising questions about what other secrets might be hidden beneath the familiar surface of his ranch property. But Ez's immediate priority remained getting Blaze safely out of the canyon, even though his discoveries had revealed that the rescue was taking place in a location that might be far more significant than he had ever imagined. Chapter 2. The Hidden Discovery. The successful rescue of Blaze from the canyon ledge required Ez Holbrook to develop an improvised pulley system that utilized both his knowledge of ranch engineering and the techniques he had learned during his years working in mining operations. But as he worked to extract the trapped Colt, his observations of the unusual rock formations and carved symbols forced him to confront the possibility that his ranch property contained archaeological secrets that had been hidden for centuries. The lifting operation took nearly 4 hours to complete, with Ez having to make multiple adjustments to his rope system as he discovered that the canyon walls were more unstable than they had initially appeared. The recent storm had loosened rock formations that had been solid for decades, creating a constantly changing environment that required constant vigilance and adaptation of his rescue techniques. "Come on, Blaze," Ez encouraged as he guided the harnessed Colt through the final stages of the lift. "We're almost there. Just stay calm and let the ropes do the work." Blaze's trust in Ez proved crucial to the success of the rescue, as the young horse remained calm and cooperative despite the frightening experience of being lifted through the air, suspended by ropes and harnesses. The Colt's intelligence and temperament that had made him valuable as a breeding prospect also made him an ideal partner in his own rescue. But as he supervised the final stages of Blaze's extraction from the canyon, he continued to observe details about the rock formations and wall carvings that convinced him that he had discovered something far more significant than a simple geological curiosity. The precision and complexity of the carved symbols suggested knowledge and techniques that went far beyond what he would have expected from casual visitors to the remote canyon. Once Blaze was safely back on solid ground, and Ez had confirmed that the Colt was uninjured by his ordeal, the rancher found himself drawn back to the canyon to investigate more thoroughly the evidence of human activity that he had observed during the rescue operation. "Tom," Ez said to his ranch foreman, Tom Sullivan, as they examined Blaze after the rescue, "I found some things down in that canyon that don't make sense. I think we need to take another look at what's down there." Tom's response revealed that Ez was not the first person to notice unusual features in the canyon systems that crisscrossed the ranch property, though previous observations had been dismissed as natural curiosities rather than evidence of human activity. "Boss," Tom replied, "I've seen some strange rock formations in other canyons on the ranch, but I always figured they were just the way the limestone weathered over time. Are you thinking someone was working down there?" The investigation that Ez and Tom conducted over the following days revealed that Devil's Canyon contained extensive evidence of deliberate modification and construction that had been concealed by weathering, vegetation, and the assumption that such features were natural geological formations. The carved symbols that Ez had initially discovered proved to be part of a larger system of markings that extended throughout the canyon, creating what appeared to be a complex record-keeping or communication system that had been created by people with sophisticated knowledge of stone carving and symbolic representation. But more significantly, Ez's detailed examination of the canyon Walls revealed evidence of constructed chambers and passages that had been carved into the living rock, creating spaces that could have served as storage areas, workshops, or even living quarters for people who had used the canyon as a base of operations. Tom Ezzy said as they explored one of the carved chambers, "This isn't just some random cave. Someone built this place deliberately, and they spent a lot of time and effort making it functional." The artifacts that Ezzy and Tom discovered in the carved chambers included tools, pottery fragments, and metal objects that suggested the canyon had been used by people with access to advanced technology and manufacturing capabilities. But most intriguingly, they found documents wrapped in oiled leather that had been preserved by the dry conditions within the carved chambers. The documents were written in Spanish and appeared to date from the late 1700s, indicating that the canyon had been used as a base of operations by Spanish explorers or colonists who had traveled much farther north into the Black Hills than historical records had previously indicated. "Boss," Tom said as they examined the documents by lamplight, "if these papers are genuine, they're going to change what people think they know about who was in this area before the Americans arrived." The translation of the Spanish documents, that Ezzy arranged through contacts at the Territorial University, revealed that the canyon had been used as a supply depot and temporary headquarters by Spanish expeditions that had been searching for gold and other valuable minerals in the Black Hills region during the 1780s and 1790s. The expeditions described in the documents had been larger and more sophisticated than any Spanish exploration activities that historians had previously documented for the region, suggesting that official Spanish colonial records had either been lost or had deliberately concealed the extent of their northern expansion efforts. But perhaps most significantly, the documents contained detailed maps and descriptions of mineral deposits throughout the Black Hills that indicated the Spanish explorers had discovered significant gold deposits decades before the American gold rush that had brought thousands of prospectors to the region in the 1870s. Professor Martinez said during his consultation with the Territorial University's Spanish language expert, "Are you saying that these documents prove the Spanish found gold in the Black Hills 100 years before the Americans did?" "Mr. Holbrook," Professor Martinez replied, "if these documents are authentic and preliminary examinations suggest they indicate that Spanish expeditions not only found gold in the Black Hills, but also established mining operations and supply networks that were far more extensive than any previous historical evidence has suggested." The implications of Ezzy's discovery extended far beyond simple historical curiosity. As the Spanish documents contained information about mineral deposits and mining techniques that could have significant economic value for current landowners and mining companies operating in the Black Hills region. But the discovery also raised complex legal questions about land ownership, mineral rights, and the obligations of current property owners when archaeological discoveries were made on their land. Ezzy found himself confronting issues that required legal and historical expertise that went far beyond his experience as a rancher and horse breeder. The decision that Ezzy faced was whether to report his discoveries to territorial authorities and risk losing control over his property, or to attempt to investigate and exploit the findings privately while keeping the archaeological significance of his land secret from government officials and academic researchers. Chapter 3: Secrets and Consequences. Ezzy's decision to report his archaeological discoveries to territorial authorities, rather than attempting to exploit them, privately reflected both his commitment to historical truth and his recognition that the significance of the Spanish documents and carved chambers required expertise and resources that extended far beyond what he could provide as an individual landowner. The territorial archaeologist who responded to Ezzy's report was Dr. Sarah Whitfield, one of the few professionally trained archaeologists working in the Dakota Territory and a specialist in early European exploration and colonization activities in the American West. Her examination of the canyon site and the artifacts that Ez had discovered confirmed both their authenticity and their historical significance. "Mr. Holbrook," Dr. Whitfield said after completing her initial survey of the canyon, "what you've discovered here represents one of the most significant archaeological finds in the history of the Dakota Territory. These Spanish installations predate any previously known European presence in this region by several decades." The excavation that Dr. Whitfield organized attracted attention from academic institutions throughout the country, as well as from government officials who were interested in the implications of the discoveries for understanding the history of European colonization activities in the American West. But the excavation also attracted the attention of individuals and organizations whose interests were less academic and more focused on the potential economic value of the information contained in the Spanish documents about gold deposits and mining operations in the Black Hills. "Easy," said his neighbor, cattle rancher William Morrison, during one of his visits to observe the archaeological work. "I hope you understand what you've gotten yourself into by bringing all these outsiders onto your property. Some people aren't going to be happy about what they might find." Morrison's warning proved prescient when Ez began receiving visits from representatives of mining companies who claimed to be interested in purchasing his ranch property for far more than its agricultural value, while also making vague threats about what might happen if he refused to consider their offers. The legal complications that arose from Ez's discovery included challenges to his property ownership, claims by various parties to rights over any mineral deposits that might be found on his land, and attempts by territorial officials to assert government control over the archaeological site and its contents. "Mr. Holbrook," said Territorial Attorney James Patterson during one of their meetings about the legal issues, "you need to understand that your discovery has created circumstances that go beyond simple property ownership. There are federal laws about archaeological sites, territorial regulations about mineral rights, and international treaties that might apply to Spanish colonial artifacts. The protection of the archaeological site required Ez to work with federal authorities to establish security measures that would prevent unauthorized excavation or artifact removal, while also allowing legitimate research to continue under proper supervision and documentation. But the security measures also restricted Ez's own access to portions of his property and created ongoing costs and obligations that threatened the economic viability of his ranching operation. The ranch that had been his livelihood and passion for 15 years was being transformed into something that he could no longer control or fully utilize. The most serious threat to Ez's safety and the integrity of the archaeological site came from organized attempts to steal artifacts and documents that could be sold to private collectors or used to locate and exploit mineral deposits described in the Spanish records. Ez, Tom Sullivan warned during one of their discussions about ranch security. "There were strangers asking questions in town yesterday about the canyon and the Spanish artifacts. Word is getting out about what you found, and not everyone who's interested has good intentions." The nighttime raid on the ranch that Ez and Tom had been expecting came 3 weeks after Dr. Whitfield's team had begun their formal excavation of the canyon site. The attackers were professional thieves who had been hired to steal specific artifacts and documents that would provide their employers with information about gold deposits and mining opportunities. "Tom, wake up the men and get them armed," Ez said, as he observed the intruders approaching the canyon area under cover of darkness. "These people aren't here to admire the historical significance of our discoveries." The confrontation that followed tested both Ez's leadership abilities and the loyalty of his ranch hands, as they found themselves defending not only their employer's property, but also archaeological treasures that belonged to the broader community and historical record. The successful defense of the archaeological site required Ez and his men to utilize knowledge of the terrain and the canyon system that the intruders lacked, creating opportunities to outmaneuver and capture several of the thieves while forcing the others to retreat without accomplishing their objectives. Dr. Whitfield, as he said after the failed theft attempt, "We can't continue this excavation without better security. These people were professionals, and they'll be back with more men and better planning." The federal intervention that followed the attempted theft brought additional security to the archaeological site, while also providing Ez with protection against future attacks by people who wanted to exploit his discoveries for private gain. But the federal involvement also meant that Ez's ranch was now permanently altered by the presence of government personnel, research facilities, and security measures that transformed the quiet cattle and horse operation into something resembling a military installation. The compensation that the federal government provided for Ez's cooperation and the restrictions on his property use was generous but could not replace the independence and simplicity that had characterized his previous relationship with the land that had been his home and livelihood. "Ez," Dr. Whitfield said, as they watched federal agents installing permanent security systems around the canyon. "I know this isn't what you expected when you decided to rescue a trapped colt, but what you've given up for the sake of historical knowledge will benefit researchers and the public for generations to come." The marriage proposal that Ez made to Dr. Whitfield grew naturally from their shared commitment to protecting and understanding the archaeological treasures that had been discovered on his ranch. as well as from the mutual respect and affection that had developed during months of working together to preserve and study the Spanish colonial installations. Sarah Izey said as they stood together at the canyon rim where his adventure had begun. "I know that my life has been completely changed by what we found down there. But the best change has been getting to know you, and working with someone who understands how important these discoveries are." A new beginning, the marriage between Ez Holbrook and Dr. Sarah Whitfield created a partnership that combined practical ranching expertise with archaeological scholarship, transforming the Thunder Creek Ranch into a unique operation that successfully integrated historical preservation with sustainable agricultural activities, while also serving as a model for how private landowners could cooperate with academic institutions and government agencies to protect and study important archaeological sites. The compromise that Ezzy and Sarah developed for managing the ranch allowed them to continue cattle and horse operations on the majority of the property, while dedicating the canyon areas and surrounding lands to ongoing archaeological research and historical preservation. This arrangement provided financial sustainability for their family, while also ensuring that the Spanish colonial sites received the protection and study they deserved. "What we've learned," Sarah explained to visitors at the ranch, "is that historical preservation and modern agriculture can coexist successfully when landowners are willing to adapt their operations to accommodate the needs of both activities." The research that Sarah and her colleagues conducted at the Thunder Creek site revolutionized understanding of Spanish colonial activities in the northern Great Plains, revealing a much more extensive and sophisticated network of exploration and resource extraction than historians had previously documented. The publication of their findings attracted international attention from scholars studying Spanish colonial expansion throughout the Americas, while also providing new perspectives on the complex interactions between European colonial powers and indigenous populations in the Dakota Territory region. Dr. Whitfield, said Professor Antonio Rodriguez from the University of Madrid during his visit to the site, "Your discoveries here have filled significant gaps in our understanding of Spanish colonial activities in North America and have provided evidence that our expeditions reached much farther north than any previous documentation had indicated." The educational programs that Ezzy and Sarah established at the ranch created opportunities for students and researchers from throughout the country to study archaeological methods, while also learning about the practical challenges of preserving historical sites in active agricultural environments. The summer field schools that they hosted became highly sought-after training experiences that produced graduates who went on to careers in archaeology, historical preservation, and cultural resource management throughout the American West. Mr. Holbrook, said one of their former students, who had become a prominent archaeologist, "What you and Dr. Whitfield taught us about integrating historical preservation with practical land use has influenced my entire approach to archaeological work and community cooperation." The horse breeding program that Ezzy continued at the ranch benefited from the additional income and publicity that came from the archaeological activities, while also providing opportunities to develop new bloodlines that combine traditional ranch horse characteristics with the intelligence and adaptability needed for horses that would work in environments where historical preservation was a priority. Blaze, the colt whose rescue had led to the archaeological discoveries, became the foundation stallion for a line of horses that was specifically bred for work in sensitive environmental and archaeological areas, combining the physical capabilities needed for ranch work with the temperament required for activities that demanded careful attention to historical preservation. Sarah Izey said, as they watched Blaze working with a group of young horses in the training ring, "That Colt's accident led to discoveries that changed both our lives and our understanding of this land's history. Sometimes the most important things happen when we're just trying to help someone who needs assistance." The children that Ezzy and Sarah raised at the ranch grew up with unique perspectives on the relationships between past and present, learning to appreciate both the practical requirements of modern agriculture and the importance of preserving and understanding the historical record that lay beneath the familiar landscape of their home. Their daughter Maria became an archaeologist who specialized in Spanish colonial sites throughout the American Southwest, while their son David became a rancher who integrated historical preservation principles into sustainable land management practices. "Papa and Mama taught us," Maria said during a presentation at an archaeological conference, "that the land we live on today has been shaped by generations of people who came before us, and that understanding their stories helps us make better decisions about how to use and protect the land for future generations." The 25th anniversary celebration of the archaeological discoveries at Thunder Creek Ranch brought together hundreds of people whose lives and careers had been influenced by the work that had grown from Ez's impulsive decision to rescue a trapped colt from a canyon that had seemed like just another geographical feature of his ranch property. The Spanish colonial installation that had been fully excavated and preserved had become one of the most important archaeological sites in the Dakota Territory, providing insights into European exploration and colonization activities that had influenced the development of the entire region. 25 years ago, Ez said, during his speech at the anniversary celebration, "I thought I was just saving a horse that had gotten himself into trouble. What I discovered was that the land I thought I knew well had secrets that went back centuries and stories that needed to be told." Sarah added her reflection on the transformation that had resulted from their work. Ez's willingness to risk his own safety to help a trapped animal led to discoveries that have enriched our understanding of history, while also demonstrating that individual acts of compassion can have consequences that extend far beyond anything we might expect or intend. The Thunder Creek Archaeological Preserve, established through a partnership between Ez and Sarah's ranch and the territorial government, continued to serve as both a research facility and an educational resource that demonstrated how historical preservation could be integrated with modern land use practices. The legacy of the discoveries extended throughout the scholarly community and influenced approaches to archaeological research and historical preservation throughout the American West, proving that some of the most important discoveries resulted from the willingness of ordinary people to pursue knowledge and understanding rather than simply personal gain. Blaze lived to the remarkable age of 32, spending his final years as a gentle companion to visiting students and researchers who learned about archaeological methods, while also experiencing the practical wisdom that comes from working with horses that have been bred for intelligence and cooperation. The story of the Thunder Creek discoveries became part of the official history of South Dakota, taught in schools throughout the state as an example of how individual curiosity and civic responsibility could contribute to knowledge and understanding that benefited entire communities and future generations. The monument that was erected at the canyon rim, where Ez had first descended to rescue Blaze, served as a permanent reminder that some of the most important discoveries in human history had resulted from simple acts of kindness and the willingness to help those who needed assistance, regardless of the personal risks or unexpected consequences that such actions might create. If this incredible story about how rescuing a trapped animal led to discovering hidden history moved your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing true stories about ordinary people whose acts of kindness created extraordinary discoveries. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that individual acts of compassion can have consequences that extend far beyond anything we might expect. Comment below and tell us about a time when helping someone or something led to an unexpected discovery. Ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest inspiring stories. Remember, sometimes the most important things happen when we're just trying to help someone who needs assistance.